another episode of Out and Up, where we encourage young athletes to achieve their very best outside of the game. And like every show, we are blessed to have another awesome guest. And y'all know how I do. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Cummings. I am really excited to be here today and kind of just share a little bit about my story and hopefully be somebody that people can see as kind of like a pillar of, if they can do it, I can do it. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being with us. You ready to get into the questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Where you originally from, born and raised?
Yeah, so I was born in New Jersey. My parents have lived in the same house like for over 30 years, I think. So I grew up in like a really small town, like right in the middle of New Jersey with my two older brothers.
All right. And so we share that in common because I'm actually from Paterson, New Jersey, born and raised.
Nice.
And so I think the town you're from kind of is about an hour away. But I think you were in like the Monmouth County area.
Yeah. In Monmouth County, it's like, if people know it well, it's kind of close to Freehold. So it's exit 8 on the turnpike, which is kind of how I always give it as a little marker.
That's awesome. So you're a soccer player. When did you start playing soccer?
Yeah, because I had two older brothers, like anything that they did, I kind of just had to do as well. So I started playing when I was 3 on like a rec team, just like playing in the park in the town in our town in a park near our house. So I started playing at 3, but obviously it was just super casual, just really running around. And yeah, so then from there on, I just kept playing every single year until here I am now.
All right. So would we say that would be your inspiration for starting your older brothers?
Yeah, I don't even know if I would really call it an inspiration. It was kind of just like you had no choice. Like, it was kind of just like being thrown in, which sometimes is like a blessing in disguise. Like, you don't really know. I mean, when you're that young, like you want to try everything anyway. But I definitely think like as I got older and they started doing different things, they were still kind of my inspiration. Just like we're a very competitive, athletic family. So even though like they stopped playing soccer and I kept playing soccer, like they still ended up being my inspiration to play and like continue to get better.
All right. Did you play any other sports in your youth?
Yeah, like I feel like I definitely did the least because I was the youngest. So I think by the time I got around to like being old enough, my mom was too tired. But I did gymnastics for a really long time, actually.
Okay.
That was the thing that I was doing when they were like, okay, you have to decide now, because now you're at the age where it gets competitive. Are you going to be a gymnast or are you going to be a soccer player? Obviously, I picked a soccer player. So I did that. I did basketball for a really long time. My dad and my oldest brother are really big basketball people. So I did that for a little bit. I swam for a little bit, which is what my other brother ended up doing. So what they kind of stuck with, I tried, I like dabbled in. But I was the one who really just decided like soccer was going to be my thing. Whereas they stopped when like you got to like the rec age, when like you finished the rec age, that was when they called it quits.
Wow. And so I hear you talking about starting at a very young age. I always just commend young people that are able to kind of really stick to it. So many young athletes, they may start a sport, stop it, or some start at a young age. I happen to be a person who, it was funny. I had a brother who coached football. I was kind of the ball boy thing. And then for some reason, when the age came for me to play, I was a little afraid to play. I didn't even trying out for football until I was maybe in the 8th grade. Then there was a little heart murmur issue, didn't get cleared to play. So I played 4 years of high school and was able to do well, in my 4 years of high school. However, then I have a son now who is now in his junior year at Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania. He started playing at 5 years old. He's been playing football since 5 years old. And so it just always amazes me, kids that really put their all into sports. So again, you being another young athlete, start at a young age and been playing all of these years. Like, what age did you recognize that, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
I think that my mom, well, I don't know when I truly recognized. My mom always tells this story. So we were playing and I was in 8th grade. So it was kind of the time where your town team is like gonna break apart, and both my brothers went to private school. So like I had to find like what school I wanted to go to, what high school I wanted to go to. And one of my teammates, so in the town, one of my teammates' mom said to my mom, like, Sydney's pretty good. Like, she should go play at this high school. They have a really good soccer program. And my mom was kind of just like, she's good. Like my mom was like so shocked. She was like, "Are you sure?" And when she tells that story, I feel like that was kind of like when I was growing up, and it probably wasn't until like I tried out for like my club team. So like in basketball, that'd be like your big AAU team or like whatever. It wasn't until I tried out for them, and I was about 13 when I did that, that I was kind of like, like, I've been playing on like this lower level town team for all these years, but here I am now, like competing with these girls who have been, shelling out thousands of dollars for X amount of years to
Right.
play at like an elite level. And like I can kind of hold my own. And then when I got older, so like when I was in high school and I made the varsity team as a freshman, I was kind of like, like it was just like little things like that, that it was kind of like I always felt like like I was pretty good whatever, but I didn't think I was anything special. But then it was like little reassurances like that, where it was like there were only 3 girls who made varsity level as a freshman, and like being one of them, it's kind of like, oh, okay, like you kind of take a step back and you're like, maybe I am kind of good at this. But I feel like even now, like I'm 23 now, and there are some times where I'm like, oh God, like am I actually good enough to be playing at this level? So like those doubts like always creep in. But I would
Okay.
say it was probably like when I was like 10 years ago, like maybe when I was like 13, I was kind of like, like maybe I could do this.
Okay. All right. So you talk about, just the transition and playing some club soccer and everything like that. You're good. So I asked the question, every player is different. Was it a big transition from going to playing just your local rec teams to playing, club soccer? Was it a big transition for you?
I don't think it was a big transition to me, because I think I was surrounded by really great people. And if I wasn't surrounded by those people, I think it would have been really hard. I had a tremendous club coach. Like he is like a second father to me. He really took me under his wing. And so he really helped me develop myself as a person and as a player. And so I think it was just normal transitional pain of just being that age and like going to high school, like going through puberty, like maturity and all of that. But I think in terms of a skill level, I feel like I'm the kind of competitor where if other people are better than me, or like if they have a high skill level, I try to meet it or I try to exceed it. So it wasn't a huge transition, because I was like, oh well, I'm not going to let this girl get by me. Like I'm not like, and so that like inner spirit, like inner competitiveness would come out, and so it made it athletically. It made the transition pretty smooth.
All right. So I asked so many athletes that are on in college and even a couple of the pro athletes we've had on, we talk about just like, what do you do away from practices to really zone in and really get better at your sport? So I'm going to ask, even then, when you kind of transition from, you know, rec center to maybe club soccer, are there some things that you can remember doing in your youth to really help you to get better at the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I really relied on my older brothers, just because like they're faster than me, they're stronger than me, just like that natural, even though they like weren't technical, like they couldn't really play. Like I would go to that local park that I grew up in with my oldest brother all the time. And like he would just stand in goal because he was so athletic that like it would be fine that he could like be a goalie for me, and I would just do different things. And so I think I found a lot of grounding. Again, like my family is a very big inspiration for me, so I think I found a lot of grounding in them. Just like if I had a rough time, I would talk to my dad about it, and he would tell me like this old story when he was playing college basketball or something like that. So I think that really embracing the difficulties, but then relying on people, and then when they say, okay, well, if you're struggling with this, maybe you need to do X, Y, and Z to get better, and actually like buying into that and being like, okay, well, I can't just complain about it, I have to actually do something about it. So I think at that age, a lot of it was kind of just like complaining, but then
Okay.
trying my best to like figure out how to channel that into something else. And I don't think I was very good at it at that age, but I think it was kind of just like getting the wheels turning of being like, I'm not good at this. So what am I going to do to get better? And so like I had my dad build me like a net outside at our house. And it was like this project that went on for years, because I would like hit a ball and it would break and it would like fall down because it was made out of PCP pipes.
Wow.
But that was just the kind of thing. And the reason why I had him do that is because in our state, I think I was in like 6th grade, and in our state cup final game, it went into penalty kicks and I missed my penalty kick. And so I was like mortified. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I had him build me one, and I would every day I would just go out there and I would just practice penalty kicks. I would put something in the middle, like a mock goalie, and I would just practice my penalty kicks. So it's like little things like that. Like if you really love it, if you really want to do it, like you'll find a way to kind of channel difficulties or doubts or whatever into something productive.
Wow. Now, what age were you at when you say you missed that penalty kick?
Sixth grade, I think that's like 11 or
Okay.
12,
Okay.
maybe.
All right.
I think, and that sticks with you. Like
Well,
that's traumatizing.
I
Like
was just about
that,
that, and that was my
yeah.
question. I was going to ask you. You end up getting to that point where this goal is built for you to kind of practice, but I think kids need to kind of hear it from someone who overcame that. Like, how long could you remember thinking back then? How long did you kind of go through the emotional part of missing that kick?
I think for a long time, especially when like I would go and I would practice and I would miss and there was no goalie, like there was no stress in that situation and I would still miss, I would kind of be like, oh my gosh, like this is the time where I should be making these. Like there's no stress in this situation. There's not even somebody in goal to save my penalty kick. Like what's going on? And so I think it stuck with me for a long time, but because it was so emotional. But I think when I stripped away the emotional bit and like focused on the technical mechanics, it got much easier. And so now it's something I can joke about and like it's something that I think is funny. But by the time I was in high school, I was like a designated penalty kick taker. So it
Wow.
took me like a few years, I think, to really be like comfortable and confident with that. But then it became like, okay, I literally went home and I took 100 practice penalty kicks. Like
Wow.
I'm okay. Like I can do this. So it's just like having that confidence and then it's like muscle memory. So now it's a joke, but I think it was probably like 2 years before I was like, okay, like I'm comfortable and confident to like really be a penalty kick taker again.
Wow, I appreciate you for that story because all too often I think young athletes will tend to feel when they see the Michael Jordans or some of the great athletes in the different sports, soccer, football, base. You young kids will tend to feel like these people just been good, never had failures, never missed. And I've heard public speakers and motivational speakers just talk about some of the baseball players, how many times, even though they may have set records and home runs, how many times they struck out at the same time. And Michael Jordan talking about how many, game-winning shots he's missed, even though he made so many. So I think it's awesome that young athletes get to hear that, even with success, there will be times that you will have to overcome some failures and some things that you may have to emotionally get over. So I appreciate you for giving us that story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's impossible to be 100% perfect. And so
Got
I
you.
think like when you're younger, that's really hard to digest, but like the older you get and the more comfortable you get with that fact, like the easier failures become because you realize it's not actually a failure, it's just a stepping stone, it's just a learning block.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that. You talked about this awesome high school that you end up going on to play for that, I think you said the friend of your mother, whatever, said that,
Mhm.
a school had an awesome soccer program. And this school, if I've done my homework correctly, would have been an awesome high school, and that would be in the Homedale area, correct?
Yes, yeah, I went to
Okay.
St. John Vianney. Yeah.
All right. All right. So what was that like going there? You said you were able to play your freshman year. Just like what was that transition like being able to go to an awesome soccer program like that?
Yeah, so my friend she actually ended up, so we went together. And so
Mhm.
it was about 40 minutes from our house, because we lived in the same town. And so we would have to do that commute like every day. And so soccer's a fall sport. So your preseason is like before you've even stepped foot in school. So like that was really stressful, like meeting all these new people. And I'm pretty introverted. And so it was kind of it was like really socially stimulating. But I remember when they like, because I mean, I don't really love the way that like high schools or middle schools, at least in my experience, like how they announce who's on varsity. Because it is obviously something to celebrate, but sometimes I think it's done in a way that's, I don't know, kind of demeaning to everybody else. But
Right.
when they announced it, there were only the three of us, the three freshmen who made varsity, and my friend wasn't one of them.
Wow.
And so I remember her mom like picked us up that day. She was like so happy for me and my friend, she was great. And so she was really happy too, but I had to then do the rest without her.
Wow.
So then I was on the varsity squad and she wasn't. And so it was again like meeting all these people. And of those, like, so there were three of us, and one of them had an older sister on the team, and the other girl was their best friend.
Wow.
So I felt like a super, super outcast. And so that was really hard, again, like socially, emotionally. But I think when I relied on the technical piece, the soccer bit, it made it easier. Um, and that's not to say that there weren't difficulties, obviously, especially when you're 14, 15, playing against girls who are 18.
Wow.
I would say like that was probably, but that happened kind of at like every stage. That happened in college for me too. But I think in high school, it was a very stark difference. Like I can remember like certain plays, like just getting shoved off the ball. It was just like, wow, like that was definitely a learning curve. But I thought high school was really fun because it was really liberating. I didn't actually play my natural position when I was on my high school team. I'm a defender, and I played in the midfield. And so that was really fun. And so high school, it wasn't like, for some sports, I think the high school level is a really big deal. It wasn't really like that for soccer. Like club is a much bigger deal than high school, but it was a break. Like it was just so liberating. It was so fun. And even though it was like really scary in the beginning and really stressful in the beginning, it ended up being something that was really great. And like growing into that program and like becoming a leader in that program by the time I graduated and was a senior, like it was really awesome. So it was nice to see all of that through.
That's good. That's good. So tell us a little bit about just some of your accomplishments, whether it was right before you got to high school or even throughout high school, just some of your accomplishments, not only as a team, but even some of your individual accomplishments that you can really hold on to and remember.
Yeah, it's funny. I think most of my individual accomplishments came at the collegiate level. Like in high school, I wasn't super highly recruited. And a lot of that was just like me. Like I didn't really know where I wanted to go to school. Education was really important to me. I didn't just want to go play somewhere. So the achievements that I did get were really powerful and like really meaningful to me at that level, because it was like kind of before people really started to notice who I was. So on the club level, like we actually did really well. Like we were ranked number one in New Jersey for like consecutive years. We were ranked number one nationally. We lost in the national championships twice, 2 years back to back, which was really difficult. But even just to like be on that level, like that was really cool. So those were like our big team accomplishments. And then individually for my high school career, it was just really nice to be awarded like different things within the team. So like I was MVP, I was a 3-time captain. I was named a captain my sophomore year. And so things like that are weigh really heavily on me. Like I really take pride in that, as opposed to, being an all-time leading scorer or whatever, which I think I was one season. I had like the record for the most goals in season. I'm sure that's long broken by now.
Yeah.
But it was just like little things like that were really meaningful. And then because like you don't know if that's going to happen for you in college, like you don't know if you'll get that kind of feeling again. So not many, but definitely like very meaningful. They were very meaningful at that time.
Wow, and that's good. But you touched on something that's always very near and dear and important to me, just with the athletes that we're trying to reach. I think in our pre-conversation, I just touched that really my heart behind the show was not athletes not being able to go to the highest level as much as being able to go to the highest level. The sport doesn't become such your identity that you don't know who you are outside of the sports, which means we don't focus on education. We don't focus on our career goals. And then when the sport is taken from you, whether you don't make it to college, whether you don't make it to the pros, then you're kind of stuck, and almost like back to square one, because now the thing you've done all your life is gone. So you touched on something that's very important, your education being important to you. And so I know that you were able to go to an awesome Ivy League university, to start your college career. And you end up going to where?
So I went to Brown for my undergrad, and the like leading up to that was super stressful. I started to get recruited when I was like the end of my freshman year, and it was like all of these schools where I didn't know why I didn't love it, but I didn't love it. And my club coach would like send me on these visits, and then I'd call him and I'd be like, I don't want to go there. And he'd be like, why? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, it's just a feeling. I'm 15. Like, I have no idea how to put into words what I'm trying to say. But I'm not sure how it is for other sports, but for women's soccer, the college recruiting game, I'm going to call it a game, because like it goes so quick. And I know they've put in a couple of laws, like NCAA laws about recruiting now, because like girls were committing in 8th grade. And
Wow.
like, I like, to each their own. That works out really well for some people. But like when I committed, I was 16 years old and I had no idea what I wanted. So it was
Right.
like, how do you know when you're in 8th grade? But, so I just kept turning down these schools, and, I was just like, don't want to go there, don't want to go there. Then all my teammates started to commit and they were picking their schools. And so it became one of those things where it was like, oh, like I kind of have to decide what I want. Like I can't just keep saying no without knowing why I'm saying no. And I got a little stressed because of my friends committing. And I think that's really common across all sports. Like, don't compare your journey to someone else's. Like, if I had
Wow.
just thrown in the towel and been like, okay, I'm just going to commit to the next school because all my friends are doing it, I wouldn't have gone to Brown. And like, that was the best thing I could have done for my life. So it ended up being like a connection. The coach who was at Brown, he was there for like 39 years. And so then he retired, and the coach that stepped in had recruited one of my teammates at a different school. So my club coach just like had that connection, and he just asked her, he was like, come see Sydney play at this tournament. And my coach, who then became my college coach, her name's Kia McNeil, she was like, I don't need a center back. Like, I don't need to come see her play. And my club coach
Wow.
was like, just come.
Uh-huh.
And I got a call from her like the next day. And it was like, I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to start this recruiting process. I was very impressed with how you played. And that was really great. Like going to Brown and like deciding all of that, very stressful again, but really great. And so it ended up being, I committed, I verbally committed when I think I had like just turned 17. Like I went on my visit when I was 16, and then like my birthday happened and I just turned 17. So I was really late, like among my friends. And the Ivy League does recruit a little late, because prior the Ivy League had pretty special rules about recruiting.
Okay.
It's like themselves, but yeah. And so then I ended up deciding like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And the reason why Brown was the right fit, I did definitely just get a feeling like when I was on campus. But as I was turning down those schools, I sat down with my mom, my dad, and my club coach. And my club coach was basically like, tell me what you want. Like, because I'm not going to keep sending you to these schools if it's not what you want. And so it was like kind of in that moment where I had to decide, I really care about my education, because everybody always says, go to a place where if you stop playing tomorrow, you'll still be happy. And I said, I really care about my education. I'm such a nerd. Like, I love to learn always. So I was like, I care about my education. I care about diversity. I grew up in such a small white town that I
Gotcha.
like didn't want to be like I wanted to expand. I wanted to be in a
That's
new
good.
place. I wanted to meet new people. And so diversity was like so important to me, which was actually like, now I know that was the reason why I was turning down a bunch of other schools, but I didn't know how to vocalize that. So diversity was really important to me. Location was really important to me. Like, I didn't want to be in California. Like, I didn't want to be across the country from my family. And we're all really close. So I wanted to be like somewhere on the East Coast. And then size is really important to me. I didn't want like a massive university. Like, I
Okay.
just felt like that wasn't beneficial for what I wanted. And so when I kind of narrowed it down to that academically, I was then able to say, soccer wise, I just want to play somewhere. Like, I just want to go to a place where like I'll play and I'll get better. So when I like put all of that together, Brown was just literally the perfect fit.
That's good.
So I spent 4 years there, and it was like absolutely the best.
That's good. That's good. And so, real quick, give you touched on it, and if they listened, they caught pieces of it. But give the young athlete, high school athlete that's really starting that recruiting process, some things they should make sure is in place as they're deciding to choose a college. You touched on little things like don't just go somewhere because other friends are making choices.
Yeah.
Like, give the little tips on what they should be looking at, when making that decision.
Yeah. I think everybody's going to be different. And I think the first and foremost thing you have to do is just figure out what you want. And that's okay if like what you want when you're 16 and what you want when you're 18 changes. I think that for me, I knew things that would never change. I wanted to be at a place where I would get that good education, and I wanted to be at a place where I had diversity. Like those were my two, like, I'm not budging on this. Um, and I think the education piece is really important because even though you're playing, like you're getting your degree from this place. And so like you are going to be surrounded in the community, like academically. Um, and so I do think that like it's great if a school is like an awesome athletic university and like that's what you want, that's okay too. Like you definitely don't have to be, but I personally wouldn't recommend that. Like I think having that educational piece is just so important. Um, that like that's what I would recommend. But again, everybody's different. And then athletically, I would say the biggest things, like don't just do it because all your friends are doing it.
Right.
Do your research about like the people that are there, the coaches that are there. Like I think that's really important. Like you can have a really great conversation with a coach, but ask to speak to a player because they'll tell you something that maybe you didn't get from the coach. Even just like, if the coach is like, we have a really great environment here, blah, 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 blah. And then you talk to the player and they're like, yeah, I have to skip my class every Tuesday because
Wow.
we're stuck in the athletic center for 8 hours, like
Right.
stuff like that, like,
Okay.
especially if that's what you care about. Like, I just think asking questions, like you only know what you can ask, like you're not going to know everything, but I just think asking questions. And so I would say having your checklist of what you want, what are like non-starters, and then athletically just like doing your research, knowing, being honest with yourself and knowing your level, I think is really important too. Like if you don't feel like you're a D1 player, that's totally fine. Like there are fantastic Division 2, Division 3 schools, and like there's nothing wrong with that. So I think just like knowing where you fall, especially like the conferences are really different. So like, can you play at the ACC or are you playing in the Ivy League? Like things like that, I think are really important as well. Um, so I would say that those would be like little pointers of things that I think are like really important. But like if nothing else, like focus on your academics when you're in high school because none of that matters if your grades aren't good enough to get into the school.
Okay.
And like there are some coaches in some schools like well they'll have more pull than others, but I think if you can focus on your academics, like you'll have a much wider berth of universities and colleges that you have the potential to even go to. So clearly I'm very academic driven, but I do think it's really important.
That's good. That's good. So I'll ask this question. I asked that the first, I think they were both last season. I've had now Ivy League. I've had a representative, a football player from Harvard, and I had a basketball player from Columbia. And so I asked them this question because some athletes are focused on the academics, but sometimes that Ivy League title can be a little intimidating. Tell a young student athlete that's definitely looking at academics, just big on their academics, like what are some of the keys to getting into an Ivy League school? I guess I'll touch on the fact that both kind of said that, sometimes people think it is just, I have to have a perfect score on the ACT or the SAT along with the 4.5 or higher, but they said, no, that wasn't the case. It was being involved in other areas, having good grades, but then being involved in other areas. So from your perspective, what are some keys for a young student that's really big on their academics, getting into Ivy League school?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are spot on. Like I definitely had good grades, but like I wasn't a great standardized test taker. So like I had the old SAT
Okay.
where it was it was not out of, I don't even know what it's out of now, but um I didn't score really well and I was like kind of embarrassed. And then I took the ACT and I did a little better. But again, like I didn't score really well. And so I did have the grades in school. Like I'd been taking APs from beginning my freshman year. Like I graduated in the top 10. Like I definitely had the grades behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I actually think a lot of schools are like getting rid of test scores. So like don't even worry about standardized tests. I agree with them. Academics are really important. I mean, it's just going to be your base level for a lot of things, but a lot of it is for me, I think, was my essay of what I wrote to get in, because I think that it really touched on who I was as an individual. I didn't write anything about my grades. I didn't write anything about school. I wrote about my relationships with other people. And I think that transition to, okay, like who is this person that we're letting into our university?
Okay.
And I'll be honest, like I actually was not super involved in high school because I just felt like I didn't have a lot of time. I did community service. I went to a Catholic high school. So I did do community service both as a requirement and because like once you start doing it, you're like, okay, like this is actually very fulfilling. So I did do that. And I think that that probably helped too. And I had a job. So I think that that showed, you know, just like work experience and the things that you get with that. But I think just like being a full rounded person, which most people are, I think that that's really important, but it's how you portray that like, and it's really hard because you have to convince people that you never see. And like some people aren't like very good writers. So maybe like that's like hard to do. But I think that just conveying who you are as a person and like letting that come across in an application is really important. They do say for an Ivy League, like the hardest thing is getting in because once you're in, it's actually like you don't know anything else. And it's actually like really not bad. And I can only speak about Brown. I don't know about Harvard and Columbia, but Brown was just a really open environment where like people just constantly wanted to learn. Like you never felt like you were competing with anybody. It wasn't a toxic environment at all. Especially I was in humanities, so it might be a little different for people that are STEM. But I would just say like remain a holistic individual. And if you don't feel like you're a holistic individual, like just get involved in little stuff. Like it's so simple to just like work at a food bank or like get a job like that. That is very rewarding financially, but it's also really rewarding in terms of the things that you learn and develop while you're doing that. Coach like a little town team, like volunteer, whatever. I just think finding ways to get involved if you're not already involved, but finding ways to cultivate that and then portray that, I think are really important.
That's good. That's good. So I'll ask real quick to kind of touch just on the sports end and academic end. Like, how did you keep a balance? I know you said for you academics were very important, but just like playing soccer at a high level, how were you able to maintain that balance and really stay focused?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked this question a lot, and my initial response is always like, I didn't know any different. Like even when I was in high school and I was playing at the club level, tournaments would start on Fridays. So I was leaving, I would leave school on like Wednesday or Thursday, have to go to wherever this tournament was for the weekend. So I would miss school for tournaments. And so like I had to stay on top of my work in high school. So when I got to college, obviously it was much grander, but it was still the same thing. Like I still had to manage my time and like, you know, figure that out. And so I think it's about finding a rhythm, and you're going to fail your freshman fall. Like you're going to try things. It's not going to work. You're going to stay up late. You're going to just not do an assignment. And it was just like coming to terms with the fact that like, you don't have to be perfect to get through college. Like you just have to do what you need to do, but you have to figure out what it is that like what standard you hold yourself to. And so there's a lot of travel when you're like a collegiate athlete. And so I did a lot of work when we were traveling. I really liked that because that meant that when the game came, I refused to do work before game day. Like I did not care if the game was at 7 p.m. Like I did not do any schoolwork before a game. And that's how I was. So I knew that that meant like after a game on the bus home, like I might have to be like hunkering down writing a paper.
Wow.
And like that's just how I was.
Right.
So balancing it's not that it's as hard as you make it, I think, because like there's going to be times where you're like, I don't want to do anything, I just want to lay in bed. If you do that, that's fine. Either you're not going to get the assignment done, or you know, like you're going to have to do it really quickly before school or something, like before the school the next day or something. So it's just a matter of just deciding what's important to you and prioritizing those things. Like sometimes sleep was important to me and I didn't do an assignment and I was okay with that.
Wow.
And it's just not being too hard on yourself when you have to make those decisions.
Okay. Now, I think it's good just hearing you say that. And these are the things I just want the young athlete to hear, just knowing what it takes to play at a high level. It's funny. Just went to go see my son play his opening game a little while back. Got to see his opening game this season. And he plays for school in Pennsylvania, but he was playing in Maryland. And the first thing he said to me was, hey, as soon as we get on the bus, 3-hour ride back to Pennsylvania, I got a paper to do.
Yep.
And so it's like, wow, like, man, I didn't recognize just what young athletes have to go through. And so I think it's important that athletes coming up know that it's a constant work, when you want to really achieve, that the athletic end, as well as staying on top of your grades, which is first, you're really going to have to be able to balance and put the work in. So it's just good. Even it's funny, as you said that, I was like, wow, I just heard my son not too long ago say that to start the season. Like, yeah, I'm about to, and it's funny because his birthday was the next morning. So he was actually going to be on the bus bringing his birthday in, but he was like, I got my laptop with me. As soon as we get on the bus to go back to Pennsylvania, I got schoolwork to put in. I was like, wow. So yeah, it takes a lot of work. And so I appreciate you even touching on that. So as we round up time in Brown, what were some of the awesome accomplishments, again, in the sport as well, individually as well as a team? What were some of the things you all were able to accomplish at Brown?
Yeah, I mean, Brown was just incredibly fulfilling. Kind of like everything that you want for yourself, I got. And like, I don't even mean that in like a bragging type way. It's just like, wow, like what an incredible experience that was. And it showed me so much about like, if you put in the work, like you can be rewarded. So we won the Ivy League championship in 2019, which was like the first time in, I think it was like 20 odd years that Brown had won. And it was just so fulfilling. So I was a captain that year. And it was just so fulfilling, like beginning my freshman year and like seeing how the team had developed to my junior year. That was the year we won. And like seeing all of that happen and then being a part of, like, I had amazing co-captains, and the three of us put in so much work behind the scenes that year that nobody knew about, like nobody thanked us for doing, but it was like the three of us knew, like, if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have won. And so like that was really fulfilling. And just like holistically, I mean, it's one of those things that you never forget. Like, I'll never forget that night. I remember everything, like getting our rings, like that. I mean, that was really great. That was probably like our biggest team accomplishment. And then there were like some other cool ones, like we went down to Texas and we played Texas A&M, and like we tied them, and like that was a really big deal for our program at the time. So like even playing in the Ivy League, like Princeton and Harvard have always been like the top two teams, and so like I've beaten both of them, and like things like that. It's just like really rewarding. Individually, I mean, again, like I just feel like I was surrounded by great people, great teammates. And so it really elevated my game and brought light to the things that we were doing. And it's unfortunate, I think sometimes like teams can't get all the awards and just an individual gets them. But yeah, I was really excited my junior year, that same year. I was named an All-American for the first time. And like that, I remember like calling my dad, crying, like, and like sharing that moment with him was just like super, super special. And I was named like first team All Ivy. I played every minute my freshman year. I actually at Brown, I think I played 99.7% of my career in minutes. Yeah. Wow. And the only two times I came out, it was my sophomore year, and it was for injury. I sprained my ankle like really bad one game. And so that I think was extremely fulfilling, because that's not something that a lot of people get to do. Freshmen a lot of times sometimes struggle for playing time, and it fell into my lap. Like a girl got hurt, and like coming into preseason, she had a stress fracture, and like I was it. Like I was the freshman who was recruited to replace her when she graduated. So like I had to step in, and it was just all of it. I mean, I could go on forever, even just like the friendships. I consider that an accomplishment. Like I consider that like very near and dear. So absolutely loved Brown. And now I feel like we've created like a real legacy. They went on to win again in 2021. And so like that, like watching them do that was like like so fulfilling. I'm so proud of them. And I mean, I'm hoping that they do it again this season too.
That's good. That's good. So you're now a professional soccer player, but before becoming a professional soccer player, you made another stop and was able to even, get some accomplishments even on that stop. After leaving Brown, you went on to go where?
So I went to Georgetown. I grad transferred. So because of COVID hit the spring of my junior year. So on a high, winning the Ivy League title, boom, COVID hits. So the Ivy League didn't play in 2020. They made the decision not to play. So I didn't get to play my senior year at Brown. And so that was like incredibly difficult. And at the time, the Ivy League had a rule where in order to compete in athletics, you had to be an undergrad. You had to be an undergraduate student. And so what that meant was if you got hurt, if you, whatever reason, if you wanted to stay, you couldn't do a traditional redshirt year like other schools can do, other conferences can do. You basically had to take a semester off so that you would defer a semester so that you could come back again. So at the time, that was the rule. And so I was sitting there and I was like, am I really going to defer like my academics for to do this when I could go play somewhere else? And like the opportunity that provides. It was a really hard decision to make, but ultimately that was what I decided to do. I kind of just thought, I did everything I wanted to do at Brown.
Right.
That like, I'm a competitor. I want to go see if I can do it somewhere else.
Okay.
On top of that, I want to get my master's.
Right.
And so it was kind of like a no-brainer, but it didn't make it any less difficult emotionally. So I graduated from Brown with my undergrad degree, and then I grad transferred to Georgetown. And that was, again, just like an incredible experience, like just trying something new. Living in a new place, DC was fabulous. I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I was able, again, to kind of like do those things that I never even dreamed of accomplishing at Brown. I was able to do them again at Georgetown. So we won again. So I have 2 rings, which I'm very, very proud of. And again, I was named an All-American. So things like that, being able to kind of like hit my ceiling at Brown, but then break it at Georgetown, that was really meaningful and that was really important. And so I really enjoyed that level. I mean, Brown's great. The Ivy League is great. It's like super competitive because it's only the 8 teams. And so you really have to fight for your spot. There's no tournament. So if you have to win out the regular season. But playing in the Big East, it was just like a different kind of level. Like it was just the challenges that you had in the Ivy League, you didn't necessarily have in the Big East, and the things that you had to worry about in the Big East, like you didn't necessarily have to worry about in the Ivy League. So I really enjoyed like having to adjust to that. And transferring is really hard. I mean, I did it. I did it as a graduate student, so I can't even imagine what it's like for people who are in their undergrad doing it. But I would say the biggest thing athletically, besides like, meeting new people, finding your new, like your confidence again, because you're playing in a new system. It was like, I was really comfortable in the Ivy League. Like I knew the scout on every single team. I knew how to break down Princeton. I knew how to beat Cornell. Like I knew all of that. Going into the Big East, like going to Georgetown, I didn't know anything. Like I had played one team in the Big East. I'd played Providence College because Providence and Brown are right next to each other. Right. So I'd played them every year. I had never played any of those teams before. And it was like these girls, they would talk about, when we play Creighton, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay. Like it was just like completely like you're constantly learning all over again. Right. And so I thought that was like a part of it that I never really anticipated. And I actually really enjoyed like having to do that. So yeah, made a stop at Georgetown, absolutely loved it. Again, they're crushing it. Hope that they repeat as well.
That's good. That's good. So I'll ask real quick, we've talked about a little bit about academics. We've talked about, the sports end of it. So I'll just ask, who is Sydney Cummings outside of sports and school? Like, what do you like doing in your spare time? And just from the career and even, we didn't even touch on, what your major ended up being. Just like, what is it? What are your career goals outside of the sport? And we're going to end with touching a little bit on the professional end, that it's your professional soccer player. But just who is Sydney Cummings outside of the sport?
Yeah. So I actually decided to major in English when I was at Brown. And originally I thought I wanted to do law. And it's funny that we were talking about that before. Like I really thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I think that dream died like a week in. Like I was like, no, that's not for me. But I decided to do English because originally I wanted to get into publishing. I read probably like a book a week. Like I love to read. And so, and even like papers, like I love to write. And so I really thought that I wanted to do publishing. And then about my junior year, I decided, like, you know what, like, this actually isn't for me. Like, this is fun, but it's not what I envision as a career. And so I actually made the switch to decide that I wanted to do something in the sports realm. And so my master's is in sports management. And it's kind of just been like figuring out, I mean, sports is huge. It's massive. Like there are so many different avenues you can take in that industry. And so it's just been like figuring out what I actually want to do. So through that, I feel like I've started to develop like who I am. So like I said, I'm like a major reader. I'm like a secret chef. I love to cook. And those are kind of like my favorite things. Like those are the things that really bring me joy. But I'm really just passionate about college athletics and like students who go through this process. I mean, I've spoken about it. I had a fantastic experience, but I had so many friends that didn't. And I think that like it's really important for universities to give student athletes like the best experience that they can have. Like I'm out of college, I have my master's, and I'm still figuring out like what I want to be when I grow up. And so it's like really important, I think that, and I took a lot of time in college. Like I did all the career resume workshops. Like I had internships every summer. Like I have friends who didn't. And so it's like really hard, I think, for them to kind of figure out like, you know, what do they want to be when they grow up? And so that's kind of like my passion point. That's what I wrote my thesis on for my master's, like having the importance of having a program for student athletes to understand who they are outside of their sport, because it's a part of your identity, but it's not your sole identity. And so I think like as I'm navigating, finding that out, I'm just enjoying like trying different things. I'm learning sign language. I'm learning ASL right now, and that's been really rewarding and really fulfilling. And so I'm just like a nerd. I'm a learner. I love to learn. I love to try different things. I love to read. I love to cook, as I said. And in case anyone can't tell, I'm a big family person. I like absolutely adore my family. My brothers and my parents they just mean the world to me. So that's a little bit about who I am, but I'm still figuring it out too. So
that's good. That's good. I appreciate you touching on that. And this is also always a blessing for me when I'm able to find guests who are like-minded. We talked about this when we had the conversation, just your mindset behind athletes just really having their identity outside of the sport. So many people are left, you know, kind of empty-handed, like you said, confused, not knowing what to do once the sport is gone. And so that was the heart behind starting Out and Up. You know, I've been able to talk to have guests that have come on and talked about their experience. I've had the professional track and fielder who was on my first season who discussed going from signing autographs to being depressed and homeless. You know, and so many athletes don't really, you know, plan out the whole map. Your one goal is to make it professionally, and then you have not really focused. And if we as fans look at sports, how many professional athletes go on, and whether it's issues, you know, in parenting, issues as spouses, issues in their financial area, dealing with their mental health issue, just all of those areas, because you put so much of your life into, you know, what you do on the sports end. So I think what you're working on and what your focus is so needed, so important. On the Out and Up end, you know, I was blessed to have a great friend and brother of mine who, during his master's program, he wrote a whole curriculum that we're finalizing and putting together for student athletes. And he did it in his master's program. He's now, you know, in his doctor's program. But, you know, because, you know, my thing is kind of mentoring young athletes and mentoring young people, period. He kind of just took it was awesome. I think he got like a perfect grade on the curriculum, but it's now the foundation of the Out and Up curriculum that we're putting together, because it had so much information that young athletes really need, whether it's the things about being an athlete when it comes to recruiting and leadership and all of those decision making, and really just the process throughout being a student athlete, but then also the things outside that, dealing with your emotional intelligence and all of those areas that are so important and I think are so overlooked, not only by young people, but by programs, schools, and athletics in general. And so good to know that there's other people that are like-minded and really attacking this, because I think it needs to be attacking this. It's going to take more than one person, more than one school program. Like schools really need to jump on this and understand if it's bigger than just the athlete themselves, then we need to really be giving them the tools and the things needed to really achieve, greatness and success outside of just being an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I could go on and talk about it forever. I agree so much. And I definitely think it's something that's really important. And that's why I think doing things like this is really important too, because like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I
Right.
remember asking my brother when he came home from college, my oldest one, I was like, what's it like? And he was like, didn't even know how to answer me. He was like, what do you mean? And then when my other brother went to college, I was like, so tell me, like, what's your day like? Like, what's it like? Because I wanted to know.
Right.
And he was like, I don't know how to answer that, because you don't know until you're there.
Right.
And like, I think that it's really important, like, for people that have done it before, like, there, for younger people, like, it's not embarrassing, like, ask all the questions, like, and I feel like that's really important. And it's not necessarily like my experience is not going to be someone else's experience, but like, if you can get some information and just feel a little bit better about the decisions that you're making getting into college, I think that that's super important. Or even just like the next level, I think that that's super important. Even if you don't go to, like, even if you don't play in college, like, how can I use sport to elevate, what I do next, or whatever, because you gain so many character traits and things like that. I think that's so important, because the piece that comes after, when you're done with that, like, that's really lacking. And so if you don't have, I think, the foundation of, I'm confident in, what I'm doing here. I've really enjoyed, like, if I didn't have the great experience at Brown and Georgetown, I feel like I'd be even more lost about who I am and what I want to do. So I think that, like, getting as much information and getting the tools to really build that foundation, so that when that next part comes, whether that's a career ending injury or whatever, I mean, knock on wood, but like, whatever that might be, like, you kind of know who you are a little bit and like what you enjoy. And I think that that foundation is really important, and things like that, things like this help student athletes understand who they are.
I truly appreciate you taking time to join us. And we have our final two questions we always ask, but before that, we will not go away from this interview, which is without asking you, how has the transition been to playing professionally?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dream. It's really rewarding and it's really fulfilling. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times the big names are what people know, and it seems really glorified. And don't get me wrong, it is. Like, I literally have a career doing what I love. Like, I mean, every day I wake up and my job is to go play soccer. Like, that's a dream. I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful for that opportunity. But it's really hard. Like, you're pushing your body physically, you're pushing your brain mentally, and things are really uncomfortable sometimes. Just like finding that footing and finding that grounding. But you're surrounded by great people, which is it's just so nice. And so it's been, like I said, it's been a dream. I mean, I never thought that I would be here. This isn't what I planned.
Right.
I never, I think there are some people who are like, like, I'm going to go to the NFL. I'm going to play professional. And like, that's great. And like, more power to those people, like, having that ambition so early on. I never thought that for myself. And so I just feel really blessed and like really lucky to be here.
Right. And it's good to have awesome hearts like yourself, because I always like to tell young athletes, like, our platforms, we need to know are not just about ourselves. So many athletes get to a professional level, and then it's about glorifying themselves. Now I'm on this stage. But to have someone like Miss Sydney Cummings, who have such a heart for making sure she's giving back to the young athlete and giving the information to the young athletes, so that they don't have to face all these brick walls that many young athletes face with not having the information that's needed. I think it's awesome. And I believe it's people like yourself that doors will only open up for you to really be able to get that information out to athletes all over. So again, I appreciate you for being on the show. I appreciate you for just having the mindset that you have to really get that information out. And so we always ask these questions in closing. How important is it to have positive people in your circle?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm like stumbling over my words because I'm thinking about my family. Like, it's so important. I think that having, and it's not always family. Like, that might not be who your group is. That might not be your people. Like, I have really great friends who have kind of been like a mock family to me, like, especially when I've been away from home. But I think just having people in your circle who understand who you are and can understand like the things that you're going through are really important, especially like we talked briefly about mental health. Like, I think just like relying on other people, because at every level, sports are hard. Like you're competing, your body is just like giving everything physically. Like it's a competition. Someone
Mhm.
has to lose. So like I think that part can be really difficult. And so I think having people around you that can like build you up, especially, I mean, I do think a lot of athletes are like their hardest critic. So like a lot of times it's us knocking ourselves down, but like you need people who can like build you back up after that. And I think it's also important to have positive people around you, just because like life is hard in general. Like it's hard without the sports.
Right.
And so I think just like being surrounded by people like that constantly will transition into your game naturally. And I think some people need it in varying levels than other people. But I think just like finding a good group, a good niche. I personally love having like different people because I know who to call depending on like what issue I'm having. Like my
Mhm.
mom's really good at this, but she's not so good at this. So that's a phone call for dad. Like things like
Gotcha.
that, I think are really important because not everybody's the same. So surrounding yourself with like a good group of people that have varying strengths, so that like, you know, if you're like, I need a little pick me up, you can call your mom and it's like, okay. And so, yeah, I think that being surrounded by positive people is really important. Just like having that foundation, having that backing. And again, like it doesn't have to be your family. It can be like a great group of friends, a great mentor. I've had like fantastic mentors along the way, but a lot of that comes from like stepping out of your comfort zone. Like I said, I'm really introverted. Like I don't do well being like overly socially stimulated, but like stepping up and just being like, this person's older. They know what they're talking about. They have a lot to teach. Like, you know, I want to take them, I want them to take me under their wing, and like things like that I think are really important too. Like you never know who's around the corner. So I think just like
That's good.
being really open to different people and different personalities, and then you might be surprised about who you meet and how that helps you later on down the road.
That's good. That's good. And so I had the last question, but it was just crossing my mind earlier and it kind of came back. It was funny hearing you at the beginning say that as you were choosing, you know, a college, you wanted to stay close for home. But being professional now, you're now in the
Yeah.
California area, and you've
Yeah.
also have had the opportunity to play internationally. What areas have you been able to play for and play in outside of Sandy? I know currently in San Diego playing professionally. Like, what has that been like playing away from home when your
Yeah.
choice going into college was to stay close to home? How has that been?
Yeah. Yeah. Different. Like I think it's okay because I'm older now. Like if I was 18, I don't think I would have handled it as well. Um, but again, like it's just another way to grow and learn and experience these different things. My mom probably gets so annoyed with me because I call her way too often. But I'm just so family oriented. Like my
That's
absolute
good.
favorite thing, and like forever, like my favorite thing is just like sitting down at a dinner table, eating dinner, and then just talking for hours after. So it is definitely like a little bit difficult because I don't get those things that I really love like that. But it's just been like such a great experience. Like San Diego's fantastic, and I probably never would have been out here otherwise. And then internationally, I mean, goodness. So my dad is from South America,
Uh-huh.
and so my dad is from a country called Guyana, and so I've actually had the incredible opportunity to play for the national team there. And I mean, it's wonderful. Like I can't even put into words, like just having that connection with my dad, like being able to go back to Guyana and see my family that still lives there. Seeing that area, like seeing where my dad grew up, like
That's
that's really
good.
special.
That's
And then
awesome.
it's allowed me to be in really cool places. Like Turks and Caicos is probably like the coolest place I went. Like flying over that ocean, wow! Like that water is just so blue. So again, and that's been like really, really nice people, really cool experiences, just like playing in different areas, but also like getting together and like meeting this group of girls who you end up being so close with, and you all have this shared identity as well. So that's really special. And that's been, again, like another opportunity where like never saw that coming, like never thought that I would be there. And then the accomplishments that I've had with that, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I, again, like just like never thought that would be the case. Like, and so it's really cool to play on the international level because one, surreal experience, like just
That's good.
representing your country is amazing. But also two, like the people, like the culture, the food, like I love going back to Guyana because like there are only certain foods that I like, I'll only eat them there. And so
Okay.
it's just like it's so fun just like being in that environment with those teammates and playing on that level, again, it's so different than like the collegiate level. Like there are the things that you have to worry about there that you don't have to worry about in college. And again, like that learning piece of the game, which I just absolutely love. So great experience. It's been wonderful. I hope that I can keep doing that. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So the final question we always close with, who or what is it that inspires you most in life?
Oh, wow. On a personal level, I'll say my family. I mean, I think every single one of them have qualities that I just try to, I'm the youngest, so it's just like I've looked up to all of them my entire life. And I always try to get different things from them and learn from them. And especially my brothers, I just think that they're two terrific human beings. But I would say like, family's kind of a cop out. I would say my best friend, who I met at Brown, Abby Carcio, she amazes me like every day. And I think that she's a year older than me. And so she went to go play pro like first. And so watching her do that and like calling her and like listening to her struggle through that until she ended up in a place that she actually really liked in France. And just like navigating the time difference and like things like that, and still talking to her every day. Like she, I think, pushes me to be better as a person, and she pushes me to be better like as a soccer player. And I think I've been really lucky to have a lot of people in my life that have done that. But I just think it's so special to like find yourself like a best friend that pushes you in that way. And that like, we'll tell you when you're wrong, and we'll tell you when you're not doing things right. And so I would say that like she's kind of like the person that's like side by side with me, as like, like she does this, and so I'm like, okay, like I want to do that. And so like having that person to like bounce ideas off of and find comfort in, like she's playing internet, like she's playing overseas. And so like, I feel more comfortable going to play overseas because like she's doing it. And so it's just like having that person for the last however many odd years, like be there for me and just be like very inspirational in everything that she does, I think is really great. So friends, family, I mean, I could literally talk about all my friends for forever, but I just think that so many of them have pushed me past boundaries that like I never would have thought of breaking. And she's one of them. So
that's good. Well, we greatly appreciate you joining us. The great information that you've been able to give the young student athlete that will have opportunities to go back and watch this show. We just continue to wish you the best on a professional level, whether it's playing in the States or internationally. Keep doing an awesome job. Keep being an example that you're being, Miss Cummings. And we're just looking forward to seeing you do great things, not only in the sport, but outside of the sport. Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And I hope this helps, even if there's one thing that someone takes from it. I really hope that it benefits somebody in any way possible, and what you're doing is great. And so I'm happy to help continue this work.
Well, appreciate you. And y'all know how I end the show the same way every time. It is good to be great in that sport, but it's even better to be great in life. So if you're truly trying to achieve your best outside of the game, we ask that you continue to join us as we go out and up. Thank you, and we'll see you next episode.